Salem's Lot. Can I kick it? Salem's Lot. I didn't put a lot of effort into the song this time.
You know what? They all can't be winners, dude.
Well, I did it as an act of protest because, frankly, I thought this miniseries sucked, dude.
Oh no! You're putting it on. Fuck.
Can I Salem's Lot?
You gave away the end. Everyone's waiting to hear what Swaim thinks.
No, you can't. Yeah, usually if you're familiar with how Kings of King goes and has always gone, like the main thing about it is that I bring amazing parody songs to the table when we open the door. And I'm sorry that I had nothing this time because I was frankly uninspired. And we'll be talking about why as we cover 1979's Salem's Lot, adapted from the works of Stephen King, because indeed this is, get it right this time, the Kings of King, plural then singular. And nice. I'm one of your kings, Michael Swaim.
I'm the other guy, Abe Epperson.
Yeah, and we cover all of the film adaptations and, in this case, TV miniseries adaptations of the works of Stephen King. You may also know us as the Coen Brothers, a previous show where we only covered things of a certain quality level. And I think you'll find that this show's a little bit different.
You're just going for the digs on Salem's Lot. What did Salem's Lot ever do to deserve this?
It wasted 3 full hours of my life with a bunch of boring vampire bullshit.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot. Well, you know what? I'll wait till the end. How about that? Give them something to
hated
wait.
It.
Yeah, that's fine.
So that's my deal with Salem's Lot, and we will dig in. It is 1979, I think I mentioned, directed by Tobe Hooper.
Tobe Hooper. I'm not really sure.
Tobe Hooper.
He did we'll talk about it.
Oh, incredibly has done movies I really love. A legendary horror director. It's just always unclear whether it's Tobe or Toby, and I'm sure there's an answer, and people are screaming it right now.
We just didn't research it.
So, Abe,
yes,
can we? I disliked the thing so much. I thought of a game. Can we do a game instead of talking about the movie?
You know how I love games, man.
I try to put in the amount of effort that I think the thing deserves. So in this case, I am going to name a title of a movie that is an anagram for Salem's Lot. And as fast as you can, I want to hear a log line. All right? Like a premise. What that movie would be about.
That's not going to be funny. All right.
Well, take your time in a hurry, like a GoldenEye multiplayer level.
I understand performance. Okay.
I mean, you want it to be somewhat fast. Should we break down why improv works and doesn't work? And
It's on Salem's Lot. We have our improv manifesto.
So, all right. Salem's Lot. So what would a movie called Mail Slots be about? And it's a pun. It's not, I know. Okay, MALE, because that's the number of letters. Mail slots.
Yeah, mail slot. So I think it's a rom-com between two dudes who are assigned the same mail slot in their apartment building, and it creates, hijinks at first and then love later.
Oh, yeah. It's got that classic scene where their dicks both end up in the same mail slot and touch at the middle.
It's like, truly, it was in my mail slot all along.
All right. Next one. Salem's Lot. What would a movie be about if it was called Lost Meals? And it's a clumsy play on Last Meals. Lost Meals
with a hint of Last Meals. Is a heist film that is one last hurrah for a group of people who would steal meals from Meals on Wheels, and they steal from the poor and they give to the poor. It's just other poor.
Oh, they give the meals to other poor people who also need meals.
So it's lost meals,
and they're like a Suicide Squad. I assume they were all on death row. That's why it's Last Meals.
Ooh, I like that addition a lot.
And this is to get their freedom.
It makes them. Can I money, please?
What about Smell Oats?
Smell Oats is a children's animated film.
Sure.
Between a donkey. It's about the unlikely friendship between a donkey and a horse, and the donkey cannot smell oats. But the farmer who loves them both is trying to get them home by throwing oats on the ground. And so the horse has to bring them both homeward bound. Huh?
You're on a roll, dude. Lasso
Money,
melt.
please.
Lasso melt.
Lasso melt?
Lasso melt.
That's an
right.
anagram?
Of Salem's Lot. Yes, it is.
Wow. Lasso melt. Oh, okay. Sorry. So Lasso Melt is a Italian neorealism film that deals much akin to City Slickers with a out of work chef who was at the tippy top of his trade. He got fired, and now he has to go into the American West and figure out how to cook the old time cuisine.
Like over a campfire. While roping some steers.
And learning about the history of
I'm just
America?
warning you now, there's going to be more than you think there will be.
Oh, God. Why are we doing this? So I should be more bullet point. Okay,
next up. No, I think this is going great.
Okay.
Smallest O.
Smallest O.
Salem's Lot. Smallest O.
Smallest O. Smallest O is another animated children's film that deals.
Yeah, well, a lot of them could be.
Yes, it's very helpful. It's a helpful trope / genre. Smallest O is it's actually, I scratch that. It's a adult animation because the smallest O, it stands for orgasm. Like people.
Oh, okay.
All right. So smallest O is about like a Pixar-esque, like what if orgasms had feelings, and they keep picking on the smallest of the orgasms.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Salem's Lot. Same Stole. Now, for spelling reasons, this is a vehicle for our friend Katie Stoll. S-T-O-L-L. Same Stole. Same
Stole is a art house film, probably directed by Alex Garland or myself.
Or both of you together.
I'm going away. I'm no longer talking about plot. I'm just thinking about movies now.
You're just packaging it.
Yeah.
It's going to run in Budapest.
Katie Stoll finds that online that her nemesis and longtime like shit poster, person who like posts on her like Twitter like and hate mail, I guess maybe it gets to that point, is actually her long lost twin.
Ooh, okay. Moving right along without questioning that too much. Mallet SOS.
It's a children's animated
God damn
film.
you. It's about a submarine captain. I'll give you a spoiler.
Wait, you can't. That's my job. You can't do that.
All right. Last but not least, Salem's Lot. Of course, the anagram everyone immediately thought of and has been waiting for this whole time. Molest Sal.
Oh, no.
All right. That's enough. You won.
That's the tagline. Oh, no.
And hopefully we killed enough time that we can reach an hour talking about Salem's Lot.
No problem. Good job.
Thanks for humoring me. Should we go under the dome?
Under the dome.
Our best guess puts the dome at 20,000 feet, sir.
Did he just call it a dome?
You think we might be stuck in here a while?
So yeah, this is the elevator synopsis of the movie. I'll do this real quick, I guess.
You're all like warmed up doing elevator synopses, so please.
Yeah.
Abe, what was Salem's Lot about?
Well, this guy named Ben Mears, right? He's a writer, and after a long absence, he returns home to his hometown, Salem's Lot in Maine. Ding, 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 Stephen King, wanting to write a book about a haunted house in town. He finds that it's been rented by this guy named Richard Straker, who's preparing it for a business partner. This mysterious person, Kurt Barlow. While he's home, he reunites with his past and starts dating Susan Norton, along an old flame. And it becomes clear that after the arrival of like a crate in the night one night, which actually houses Kurt Barlow, an ancient vampire.
The arrival of a crate in the night. Sorry.
The entire town is slowly getting turned into the vampires.
It's goddamn vampires, man.
Yeah, it was goddamn vampires.
That is really about it. I mean,
yeah, that's all the through lines
they
I
do.
can think of.
They do the things that you would do. They go get crosses and stakes. And they go in in the daytime and they stake that guy hard through the heart.
Pretty missionary position.
Vampire shit.
Vampires.
Yeah, he says, they say, well, what about his familiar? How will we take him out? And he says, well, you can just shoot him. 45 minutes later, they encounter him. They shoot him. He dies. They were right.
Yeah, they shoot the guy who's not a vampire, and then there's this one thing, prologue and an epilogue.
That's the only textural element. Is that they form the two survivors who are Ben Mears and a kid who is
a small boy,
his girlfriend's younger brother, I think. I forget his actual connection. One of the townsfolk is a rascally kid named Mark, and Ben and Mark become basically on the run from the vampire Illuminati for the rest of their lives. They're the only
ones in town. I mean, with the exception of the constable, who has a scene where at the end he's been kind of denying him. Huh?
Why don't the vampires chase him all over the world? Chief Wiggum.
Kill their master. He just kind of bailed. So they're like, all right, fine. And he also didn't believe. So that's like neat and tidy. Although the vampires wouldn't know that. In fact, the vampires in this film seem pretty like Thrall-esque. Well,
they're also, or look-wise, at least the film version, I don't know how they're described in the book, but clear of the Nosferatu school of vampire.
Yeah.
That style of makeup. If you've seen What We Do in the Shadows, they're the old European one that they accidentally... I shouldn't have said that. Spoilers for season 2, I believe. But you know what I mean. Yeah. Nosferatu is the touchstone. Nosferatu.
Right now. Yeah, so that's kind of under the dome. I mean, that's more or less what it is. So we can move right along, right?
We're lucky we have that new Star Trek show, because what a bad episode this is going to be. Here we go. Next part, make the sausage, move it along. They can't all be winners. All right, what section are we in now?
What a dick. This is Skeleton Crew.
Something in the mist! Shut the doors! Shut the doors!
This episode should be 25 minutes.
This is where we talk about the creative team or any interesting behind the scenes trivia. What's that, Michael?
I said this episode, it would be funny because we never go under 50 if this was like a 25-minute episode.
I'm going to make it. I'm going to stretch it for time, baby.
Stretch it.
We'll invent a game that we can play. I don't know.
This is nominally our deep dive show. So yeah, he generally runs long. But speaking of behind the scenes stuff, I'll say this. Originally, this was going to be a feature film directed by George A. Romero. I bet that would have been better. But...
yeah, but it was made for TV, so he
dropped out when he said, I'm not a TV director.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Toby Hooper, who was on the way up at that time, said, I'll take it. And indeed, that was a smart move because it helped. It was one of the stepping stones that built his career. And he's made good horror movies, and he eventually got there and has made some good horror movies that I like.
Yeah.
Also notable, Dick Stryker actually is good. And that's because that's James Mason, who, if you're too young to know, is just a great character actor from about 2 generations back, who is really, really, really good. And when you put him in stuff,
Star is Born,
does a good
North
job.
by Northwest, Lolita.
James Mason. Yeah. And he's very creepy as Mr. Straker.
I'm sure I'm sure, 100% sure, not even knowing this, he's the impulse for a Simpsons character. Right. He's got to be. He's like one of those guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I want to backpedal a little bit for Toby Hooper. The reason you might know that name is he's famous for the Leatherface movies. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which got him this job.
Yep.
Also Poltergeist. And Swaim, you mentioned how you didn't like this movie.
What?
Or miniseries, yes. Depending on who you talk to, Spielberg was more instrumental in the direction of Poltergeist than one would expect out of a producer.
Right.
Some think he all the way like shadow directed sequences. And if you look at his other films, he directed another Stephen King adaptation, The Mangler, which I'm sure we'll cover at some point, which is widely considered to be very, very shitty.
Very bad.
Yeah. So I've actually seen it. We'll cover it. But it's garbage. It's hot.
But if it's hot garbage, I might be less confrontational. This is tepid vanilla pudding, which is the thing I get most angry about. This was just boring, basic missionary vampire stuff going across my glazed eyeballs. And that's the kind of thing that I hate the most. But nevertheless, we should also mention that this was Stephen King's second published novel. And I only mention that because that is a focal point around which the constellation of my hatred for Salem's Lot will become sensible.
It's also the second film to be based off his writings, if I understand the chronology.
So it's real early days, but I think importantly, it's early days even for him as a storyteller on the public stage.
Yes, so this is early days for several reasons, which means I think that there's probably less Stephen King in it because he wasn't as influential. You know, he was just a writer.
Yeah.
Just a writer guy. He had no name.
And we usually talk about any actual King/novel stuff in this segment. So I'll say that King has said that he was inspired to write the book because he was an English teacher before he was Stephen King. And he had his English class read Dracula. And he said he became curious about what would happen if vampires came to America. And I don't want to unpack that, but I will when we get to it, because there's some interesting psychology to go into there. Is there anything else Skeleton Crew wise or any notable?
We don't usually use this section, but I was moved, I guess, to write like up a little thing that I thought was kind of cool.
You're turning everything into director piece theater, I swear.
Yeah. Okay. It's only the way which I see the world, Swaim. All right. There's a shot in this movie where one of the boys is abducted and they're walking through the woods. And at first I saw how the fog was moving kind of unnaturally fast as they walk through the forest. And this is usually a problem of like an impatient director, right? Because especially when it's clearly a stage and it's made to look like a forest, and you got fog machines that got these nozzles that spit out fog. You can get like low volume versions that like kind of emit the fog as a haze, but it always has this kind of momentum because it literally is steaming out of this machine. So that's usually you can just wait it out until it stops its momentum.
Let the fog settle.
Right. And I noticed that I was like, ooh, bad directing. Because there's like nothing, you can't really slow down gases, right? You just have to kind of wait. Then at a particular beat in the scene, though, I noticed that the wind kicks up like a hurricane and blows the entire set's fog into oblivion and like just absolutely pounds the greenery on the stage. And it's kind of awesome. And I thought that the fans must be pretty huge because while the space is not that small, that fog reset is quite a bit. And it's because it has like nuance to it. There's layering in the set. If you look at the earlier shots in the sequence, there's like a little fog foreground, a little fog background, and there's pockets of light. And there's a lot like shooting fog is kind of hard, even on a stage, because you have tendency on stage.
Won't die.
No, in a stage, you have the tendency, because you have so much control, to kind of dial in lighting and give like a special light for like, oh, just a hair light for when they step into this spot. Why? Because we have a grid and we can do it. But if you start backlighting fog a lot, you'll start to notice it looks really unnatural very quickly. And it's also hard to light because if you like front light it, you usually don't see a lot of it. So it's like, a little can go a long way with light and in fog. So I noticed this stuff only because I'm like kind of trained to, and it looked manufactured and I noticed it, but all I can say is this, that like for a TV movie, especially, that in like 4 to 6 shots, and you're working with kids, what a challenge. Like, this is absolutely an impressive sequence to me, that even though it at first looks like, oh, they didn't seem like they did work, it actually is one of the more technically proficient aspects of like all aspects of filmmaking, trying to run your time, efficiency correctly, all of the different hurdles that you had to do just to get this shot, even with the stage control in 1979 on a TV movie budget. It's pretty impressive. And I just wanted to point that out, I guess.
Fred Willard's nipples also in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Abe, do you think we were foolish not to do the thing that we had in Coen Brothers, where we go through and do lines and moments that stood out? Sometimes I feel like we should have that. No?
I don't think we've ever been foolish once in our life, Michael.
Great. Then are we ready to move into...
It.
Yeah, I think we did.
Bill, if you'll come with me, you'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too.
I think we did it. Okay, I'll be normal. I'll get on track. Let's talk about the movie, the themes, the scene work.
I do not like your tone, sir.
And what you get out what you put in, Salem's Lot, or as I call it, lame L toss. That's one I didn't use.
I'm very thankful you did. I have a few observations.
Yeah, me too.
Because this is my first viewing of this, right?
Me too.
All right.
And you just did a chunk, so can I go?
Yeah, you go.
All right. I think that the most notable aspect is we almost could have covered this movie first, but it doesn't really matter. You can make the connections in either direction, but the fact that the character is a writer. Ben Mears, the main character, is a writer / teacher, which is what Stephen King is. That has become a through line in multiple. So we talk about the Kingiverse, and there's a Venn diagram, and there's things King likes to do, and there's King tropes. It has really opened my eyes doing this series that he's a lot narrower. He has less range than I thought. As a storyteller, he does have very clear tropes and rhythms and proclivities. And this is almost the progenitor of so many of them in an interesting way, because it also hints at stuff that's much better developed later on. For example, they talk about how the Marston house is evil, and it's not just vampires. It's subtly fucked up the whole town, but they don't really go far into it. But they have a throwaway line or two about how, no, the whole town's kind of, maybe there's some extra racism because of the house. Who knows? And they never really follow up on it. And they'll say, like, do you believe evil can be confined to a place? But they don't follow up on it. They say the most interesting thing in the movie that they never follow up on, in my mind, was him going, I think the house itself is evil. And if the house attracts evil, I know. Why did it attract me? This implication that there's going to be some dark truth about Ben Mears that's never revealed. Yeah. He's fine. He's good.
He's fine.
But this is all obviously pointing to The Shining, which is a great King story that is like finally that idea come to full fruition, and shades of it with the town being fucked up from the malevolence. And there's a couple other elements, but I'll just say it's interesting, and I'll definitely spout them out as they reoccur to me. But my real takeaway was just it's fascinating to watch Stephen King sort of find his legs, especially considering that he's mashing it up with such a classic monster as vampires, which if you guys heard my dumb faux pas, 5 episodes ago, I said, I don't think King's ever done vampires. And everyone tweeted, Salem's Lot, you fool. And I will stand behind it's not his best thing, and it does feel like him practicing horror, and he's taking a well-trod territory. Vampires, not gonna rock the horror boat, and he's doing his thing, and he's figuring out how to be Stephen King. I'd call it like a clumsy sophomore effort from Stephen King, and interesting for a show like us, and for completionists. And I'm sure it struck certain people at a time in their life where they have nostalgia for it. Because I looked at, this movie has lots of 5-star reviews of people saying, I love this movie. I know it's dated, but it has me hypnotized from start to finish. And I'm like, well, it just isn't good. I don't know what to tell you. It's very basic and workmanlike and boring. In my opinion, that with
TV movies, because they can't really take risks. They can't do violence that often. They can't do gore at all.
They actually did reshoots to make the cut we watched, which is the Hooper director's cut, gorier than the miniseries was. And I'm like, what? This barely had any blood in it or anything.
Yeah.
I also love that when James Mason's coming down the stairs, he wastes all their bullets shooting him in the chest slowly until his gun is clicking empty, when one bullet would have killed him. Just let him die. He's slowly falling down the stairs. Let him fall down the stairs and die. And there's so many problems with the staging, the blocking being unrealistic, the horror thing where it's why would they turn around slowly? They would turn around quickly. Oh, this movie. Oh, it's so vanilla.
I thought that you're right about the staging and the blocking, but I thought that interior is pretty badass looking.
The taxidermy room was cool.
Yeah, there's some cool production design elements.
I got a kick out of seeing Fred Willard be totally serious, deliver no jokes, and actually do some okay acting when he was you don't want to kill me. You don't want to throw your life away for a lie, begging for his life shit.
Yep.
I miss
that. He's
man.
having an affair and he gets caught and the guy puts a shotgun in his face.
Which also clicks empty.
I mean, I think that there's something to be said about when you start doing more generic kind of versions, like we kind of talked about this being like vanilla vampires. I had the same observation where I was like, oh yeah, it's more clear than in this film than most of other adaptations of King. You can kind of see all the different tropes, if we list the tropes that we're pretty aware of and are well trodden at this point for King, it's he usually follows a group of adolescents, or there's
he's in town
involved.
Working on a book.
Small towns, usually in Maine. And one of the big ones that really dawned on me this time is that much like Thinner, Dead Zone, The Mist, there's a focus at one point where the small town blames other people or fresh faces, the strangers. And it's a huge, when you look back at his canon, you realize that a stranger in a small town being blamed for a crime is and depending on the story, whether or not that's true, is, based on those particulars.
Well,
but that's something that he likes to do a lot.
Definitely.
Right?
And the most endlessly compelling thing that I think has come out of us discussing it together for me has been seeing how he likes to twist the nature of Americana or the American dream to derive his premises. Yes. Have you, do you know, I think it's Robert Englund. Let me look that up. But the artist who does twisted Americana stuff. The artist,
that rings a bell.
Yeah, but Robert Englund's Freddy Krueger. I think maybe
you're thinking of Freddy. I was thinking you're thinking about Freddy because we're talking
and
about
it's
horror.
Not Ben Edlund either, so I give up because that's the Tick guy. But anyway, there's this guy who paints super surrealist, usually Ronald McDonald's involved. You know that guy. You know the art, I mean.
I think so, yes.
But anyway, I always see that in my head when we talk about this, and it reminds me of like the kind of vibes Stephen King stuff starts to give off, where it's like Pennywise has such a specific, compelling vibe because circus pop art is like an American, uniquely American tradition. And it's interesting to me that King explicitly says that he was like, I wanted to bring vampires specifically from Europe to America and see how that would change it. And where I think it falls down is it didn't change nothing. It like he then goes on to tell the same. But if you know what I mean, I feel like James Mason brings too much of Europe with him. The vampires don't speak, so it's hard to. Okay, go ahead. Like you tell me then. In what way is this a uniquely American vampire story?
Well, those are two different questions. I do feel that there is a little bit. I can't answer the uniquely American aspect of it, or I can answer the what makes this one different than previous vampire films.
Okay, go for it.
Which one do you want?
The second one, because you have an answer.
I have an answer. All right. So to me, like, what's different about this movie than others is like pretty well documented. They talk about it. The producer talks about it. It's kind of like at this time in like the, totality of cinema, Dracula was usually portrayed in as aristocratic, like, Transylvanian kind of baron or count, right? And he was usually sexy and like had rouge on his cheeks and a widow's peak and was very well spoken. And a part of his allure was his, aristocratic kind of, personality that kind of like made us all, feel, because it's like an aristocrat thing, right? Like when we look at, what the mythos comes from, you're right. This is one of the first times that we actually see a version of vampires that are just like feral. They have some power. It seems to be telepathically involved because everyone immediately looks in their eyes of vampires and they're like, oh shit. But the vampires can barely make words. And the main ancient vampire is entirely wordless.
A beast. But that's not the first time. That's the Nosferatu tradition. That's how Nosferatu differs from Dracula. Nosferatu always is just a hissing monster.
That's true. But I guess in terms of like what Dracula had become,
I must point out the reason this was downgraded from being a feature film into being a TV miniseries is the producers felt they missed the boat because a film version of Dracula and Werner Herzog's Nosferatu the Vampire were just released. So they're like, oh, we missed the boat. Let's make it a TV miniseries for less money. So I would argue that everyone involved knew
that this was not going to be
that it was boring and played out, and Stephen King is just finding his feet, and it's like a basic, not as good as he would eventually be Stephen King story.
Kind of right, but I still want to like go to bat for like the crafts people.
I get it,
because like everything's contextual, right? Like it's not just that. It's not just that. Yes, there was Nosferatu, but that was so old at that point that like there had been a swing back where like, no, Dracula and vampires are done this way. And they chose to go a different way. That is true. So that's all I was going to point out about that.
Also that artist's name, he does look like Ben Edlund, but his name is Ron English.
Wait, Rob Englund?
No, Rob Englund is Freddy, bitch.
Freddy.
Yeah.
He looks like who's Ben
Edlund. But the artist, who I highly recommend people look up, his art is great, is Ron English, and he does Twisted Americana style shit.
Ron English.
Ron English.
No, I don't know which one to search. No, I do. It's fine. Ron English. There you go. I like that. I think I know the art you're talking about. I'll look it up later. I do have I did think that there's not something worth mining here. About what's unique about this tale, about being a traditional American version.
I'm
and
trying to figure out what is there.
It's actually,
do you see something?
I think that this is one of the only times that we've, watched or, King is going for romance and sexuality. That's par for the course for, vampires.
They do the classic TV drama miniseries of the 70s, 80s thing where it's not just the A plot about vampires, almost as if it's obligatory. We get to know the town a little, and we're like,
exactly.
And it makes it feel novel, like so-and-so's cheating on so-and-so.
Because it's not kid-based or adolescence through the lens of adolescence. It's not, just like, oh, shoot, they're gonna, she's going to go out with me. It's not that kind of stuff. It's like more mature kind of themes. And so kind of going back to, if you haven't listened to the show, we have a take, which is that King takes traditional cultural tropes of suburban, rural suburban America. And usually they take tropes. By that, I mean things like coming of age, the idea of having a small town like reunion, or like blue collar work or blue collar characters. 50s lingo is there, and its values is there because that's the society that King was kind of raised in. So this is the first time I think that he dissected a small town's like romantic historical contexts. And
of course, just under the surface, it's all dark as hell. Oh, he's actually cheating with her, and when he finds out, he's gonna blow his head off. They're all dark. Yeah.
It's not the nature of strangers in suburban, like where it's just like who's stealing these kids, like it must be someone who's not inside this town. This is more nuanced in like, all right, there's always kind of been a cultural hypocrisy, not just in America. Like if you watch Italian neorealism films or French New Wave films, you get a lot of this mid-century breaking down. I think it was in like the 50s and 60s. And with the whole idea of like, just what was going on culturally in the 60s. There's this breaking down in the film sphere that the more archaic and traditional mishandling of things like the fallout of a closely knit community and the messy byproduct of local romances were like a thing. Fist in the Pocket is a film that I can recall. Like there's a lot of films that are like, oh, we're doing this nonsense as humans. We're doing theater. Everyone knows everything about everyone. That sounds nice, America, that you have like, oh, everyone knows your name. Yeah, but until you have that night where you get drunk and make out with someone and now everyone knows and you're like, I don't really want to be with that person. Like he doesn't really do that, but he kind of does. Like if you look at the relationships in this movie, we have Ben Mears, who's like the new hotness in town. He's starting to date Susan Norton. And it's all very like risque for the 50s, which is like very.
But he's also super woke, dude.
Yeah.
She says exactly. Modern American female aggressively stating her needs. Does that make you uncomfortable? No, it makes me feel good.
It's got all of the complexity of like the Karate Kid,
like he's a good ass guy. In fact, for no reason other than just his moral compass, he voluntarily came back to this town to root out all the evil that he senses is there.
It's like, oh, baby, let's go to the lake is like kind of like one of
their scandal
conversations. Yeah. And it's very in the face of that traditional and that classical, but it's not like anything that we would say now is like, oh, we make fun of that shit now. And that's one of the aspects of Stephen King is old. Fred Willard plays a role, Larry Crockett. He's the realtor of the town, I guess. And his assistant, Bonnie Sawyer, they're having an affair. And Coley, Bonnie's husband, finds out and threatens to shoot Crockett. 3, there's a divorced elderly couple who still like kind of lives with each other. Weasel and Eva. Ned Tibbetts is like a single guy stalking Susan Norton, who they used to date, and another just like peppering in just like Americana bullshit. People, mostly men, will refer to women as a kind of sexualized pet name, like Boom Boom Bonnie, or they'll comment about how Eva Miller was quite a dish. We kids used to watch her sashaying down the street. It's usually responded to by women as just like men, and so it's like it's also kind of presenting that's the culture there. And at one point at dinner at the Nortons, Susan mentions Ben's new book being about two men, and her mother goes, "Not one of those." And then meaning like, oh, is he gay? You know, it's just like such a bizarre thing.
Are the characters in the book gay?
Yeah. And does that mean that Ben's gay? There's also a comment at one point at the end of that dinner where the husband, the dad, Dr. Norton says, "Sorry about the peas. She usually does them better than that." Which I just thought was such a fucked up. Like, I think that King
I love it.
is
That's
not
the same dude who handcuffs his son and is like, "Tighter, son?" And he's like, "Yeah, Dad, I want it tighter." And he goes like, "Where are the key for these?" "I don't need the key." "All right, son." And you're like, I mean, first of all, I just think that guy was weird because every scene he was in, he only had a function. Weird. And if you put all the functions together, it makes a very bizarre personality.
He was weird. But like, at the end too, and he's like just going up the stairs, and I'm like, yeah, it's very unnatural. That actor was strange.
He's a weird guy. But then also just the clumsy screenwriting of, "I wonder if that kid will escape from handcuffs later." Like, right. Go on.
I think that because he chose his characters, his identity characters, to be on that side of the kind of more progressive side of things, and the fact that vampires represent history, they're literally running in an antiques store.
So it's the idea that they also one of the interesting things is I don't mean to say only like a bitter old bastard, but one of the things is interesting is they talk about the geometric progression of the nature of vampirism, which not every vampire story goes into, but treating it like a plague, like literally like the stakes are the whole
fast.
Pun intended. The stakes are the whole town could literally become vampires in a matter of days. It's almost like The Thing.
Yeah. Like every night they're knocking out like 60, like, I don't know. Like
a lot of the characters, like both of those kids that you thought were going to be identity characters immediately get turned into vampires. And you're like, all right, I guess, half of our ensemble is now vampires. So I think that you're right that there's the idea of the old world European value, throwback values coming over and infecting a pocket of Americana with the like stilted backwards, no goodness of the old world. But I'm just rolling my eyes because I feel like we're making the story sound more interesting than it deserves. Like, watch White Ribbon.
These are the things I think that it's one of the failures of the adaptations. I haven't read the novel, but all the pieces are there, and I know enough about story and King and his impulses in terms of story that like I can already tell that there's a lot of work that he's putting into to try to flip it. I think he's doing what you just said, where he is kind of representing this other, which is one thing, but he's also trying to say that traditionalism, as he often does, is kind of like a double-edged sword, right? There's some aspects of the traditional American experience that are good and like pepper in some of the fun times, riding a bicycle with your buds, saying swears down at the frog hole.
Summer break.
These kinds of things are usually fun for like nostalgic effort, but he usually tries to bleed the assumptions of Americana,
where he's like, don't forget there was also a bully who would kick your ass. Like there was bad shit.
Don't forget, like he usually does it by parallel too.
Or one of your friends, their dad was hitting them and shit. Yeah.
Yeah. He usually makes it an analog. He always kind of says, he never has like the thing that he's trying to comment on, like in the case of It, where he's talking about strangers and others. He makes it into this, like, a clown is a very common, like, you invite a clown to your fucking house on your birthday of your child. That's a weird thing that we do. And he's kind of pointing out, here's this comfort thing. Is it that comfortable though? All I have to do is make it like an alien clown that's like hideous and horrifying. Same thing here. He's doing that with vampires. But if you look at like in between the lines, you can kind of see that he's doing this parallel to the traditionalism of like dating structures, dating like protocols, and like the way in which we do like the hierarchy of gender, society is kind of fucked up, and everyone knows. And you have the fallout of all this shit. You have people like the real like if you look at the first like hour and a half, there's almost no vampires.
One of my notes in all caps is Then they have the kid's funeral. Then there's an eerie wind that goes by. It's 90 minutes in. That's fucking it.
Right.
A wind.
Yeah,
like we haven't seen a vampire on camera yet.
And like the tension comes from seeing like the Fred Willard scene.
There
where he's
is
got
no
a
tension.
gun. But he's got a gun in his face, and you think that he might get shot because the guy's like drunk and unhinged. But he's also like discussing this fallout of like divorced elderly couple. He's talking about Ned Tibbetts as like a stalker. Like all ththese people are being converted.
But I gotta say, you
what?
do have a strong feeling as the audience of where are the vampires? Because you know it's about vampires.
Those kids are terrifying. The window stuff is actually like for 1979 a very compelling image. I think that's why
it just didn't have the impact on me. That's the one image everyone talks about in the reviews. It looked like the footage was clearly reversed to me. The kid is not doing a good job acting.
They put kids on like this like essentially a crane, and so that because usually there's wire work, and they just like moved it, and it's kind of cool. Like
they start the shot with their lips on their brother's neck, and then the crane pulls them back, and they reverse the footage, and everyone lauds it. I think it looks bad and hokey. I don't think it works. I just think it's a bad effect and a bad scene compared to The Witch, man. The kids in The Witch, fucking the scene where he's possessed and he's writhing around. I don't know.
There's a difference of 30 years or whatever,
and I absolutely under 50
plus
80 40 years, and
40 years plus,
I absolutely understand that. But I calls them like I sees them, and just in the way that our comedy will one day be completely dated to the point that it will be an alien language that everyone won't care about and will forget. I think Salem's Lot has expired. I don't think it's good no more. You don't need to experience it. You've experienced better stuff since then that on the same theme.
I mean, I think that's right. It literally is laughable in some instances.
Oh, your favorite scene. Let's talk about that.
Well, there's one when like Fred Willard dies and Mike Ryerson dies. There's two bits where it freeze frames and zooms in.
Zoom pump freeze frame.
Yeah, and it's like one, and it's because it's for TV, it fades out real quick because it's like, you cut in a commercial. But it's one of those things of a bygone era that they really we never got good at the cut to ads, right? Because I don't think it's that possible. But the one where the boy in the grave bites Mike's neck, it's so stage, it's so funny. The other one is the
other one that gets me is the guy in jail who gets bit, because you just see a shadow and then it cuts to a matching shot of him, and he tries to do a scared face, but it's basically as if someone said, just open your mouth as wide as you can. Yeah. He doesn't look scared. He just looks like he's trying to open his mouth very wide.
That's where I think Hooper fails, is I think that he's technically proficient, especially at the time, thinking outside the box of let's shoot it in reverse, or he does some interesting stuff in highlight. I think he's technically there. But like there's so many other filmmakers who are also at the same time technically there, and had much more interesting things that they could do with the medium. Like, I think that the reason he got like propelled forward, I think, as a director is because Texas Chainsaw Massacre is kind of like the OG, El Mariachi for like Richard. Horror. Yeah. Like because like Rodriguez and what he's famous for is like the $10,000 film school, right? He's like, I shot it super cheap. I used a town. I used people, like stuff that today seems obvious for our tours, because this is in an age without our tours. Our tours have not happened yet. So like you don't have this outside the studio system.
Would you not count Sergio Leone as an auteur?
I mean, yeah, I guess you can consider international film. I'm talking about the American state of film. But yeah, like, because those are independent films, and that, there isn't a conglomerate Hollywood behind it. Once you've out of the 20s and 30s.
Oh, you mean Hollywood studio system hasn't subsumed the idea of the auteur yet, which now exists within the studio system, which is funny.
That's exactly right. Like, there's a lot to unpack about that. I could talk about that for a long time.
Sure.
About how like MCU and shit is like actually like 2 steps back. But anyway, it's like when you think about it, like I think what the appeal of him was like, oh man, he can shoot it cheap, and he knows like little tricks to do. Like the game he plays with Eyelight in this movie is kind of cool. I think I mentioned it kind of similarly in Thinner, which might have taken its idea from this movie, which is that like he started to ping Eyelight as a foreshadowing concept for who's going to turn into a vampire, and also kind of like to figure out how much of a vampire are they in this scene, because they have these ultimate, like when people are an actual vampire, they have these glowing eye contacts that are actually kind of stark and striking and visually kind of impressive. Like, I think they look good.
The contact lenses are the best thing in the movie.
They're really cool. And he started to do this thing with Eyelight where you make huge eyelight sources, or also give multiple sources of light so they would ping the eye multiple times, which is an unnatural look for most conventional Hollywood. We like big eyelights, but we don't like them like close to subject and large, because that means you like turn into an anime character. So there's these piercing eyelights that happen, and then he lights it very darkly. That makes everyone feel like they're kind of like hit, like when you go outside at night and you see like a raccoon rummaging through your bin and you see these 2 glaring eyes at you, it's because of the eyelight. He's kind of trying to evoke that, even on scenes that are just like, oh yeah, Susan Hopper's just walking around, she's just walking around in the house at the end, whatever the name of the house is in this movie. Yeah. And she hasn't turned into a vampire yet, but it's like, yeah, but you're going to be a vampire in a second. And he's basically showing us that by making her look horrifying, like an animal. Anyway, I think he's good at that stuff, but directorially, you're absolutely right. Sometimes he's just like, open your face.
Same movie has a scene where a guy makes popsicle stick cross, blesses it, burns it into a vampire's head, and she fades away.
She does.
She just disappears. That's how she dies. She disappears. It
TV
never happens to
budget.
any other vampire before or after that. That's just how she goes out. She fades away like a dream.
Also oh man. And
I also love the first thing that our big bad ultimate vampire does when he finally arrives in the movie.
Hell yeah.
Is Three Stooges style, grab mom's head and dad's head and clang them together and knock them out like fucking bonk.
For a vampire movie, there's a surprising a lot of like WWE moves.
Yeah, for real.
Like you mentioned that one, the lead gets decked by a guy who's hiding in the furniture at one point.
He's hiding in a folding screen. Yeah.
That's related to like the romance arc. It's unrelated to the vampire arc, although that man turns into a vampire eventually.
Most people do.
But yeah, he's in his room hiding behind like, I guess a facade, and the door, he's like using it as like a cave, and the main like takes off his jacket and is gonna go take a nap, and the guy just like, bam, I'm here. And it's like he's straight up from WWE or something. It's one of the funniest things I've seen.
Yeah, there's just the problem where you don't understand how they didn't see that it's funny instead of scary frequently. Like, at the end, when they finally kill Barlow, the way they show that monumentous death is his made, they did a like gel filled fake head and it melts away until it's just a skull. Fine. But then in one frame, like Peter Griffin falling off his bike or some shit, the jaw of the skull clicks open and there's a really loud click noise. Like
That was hilarious.
like the vampire as it dies is like smiley face, like bye kids. It's like so dumb. Just so
Here's
dumb.
Johnny. Yeah, it's
It's like
not
when you go to a
good.
haunted house and like a plastic witch jumps out and goes, yeah, like this is not
that's right.
scary. It's just
That's right.
impulsive.
And that's one of the other things is that it's not just a bad impulse, like, because that's I guess maybe if you're making it for like kids or whatever, you know, like a witch cackling as a scare in a haunted house is not a bad impulse, but it's just like pretty basic, right? And it's not like refreshing anything or trying anything new or making its imprint on the memory of the person who experiences the scare. So Hooper's not really doing that. Also, it's not clear that that's what he's doing. So from a directorial standpoint, like, I don't know what that opening mouth, like, watch that sequence and like someone tell me film criticism.
What he thought he was doing.
Yeah. Tell me what is the goal there? And there's multiple things like the guy in the jail opening his mouth as a reaction. Like you can tell. Yes, there's sometimes you use bad actors.
Oh,
I think that still is put at the foot of the director because
I agree. I
cast
actually
that person.
I actually
but also on the day you
sorry,
could have
go
told him
ahead.
not to just open his mouth and look weird.
Yeah.
Like
agreed.
you could go, I don't have it. I want to keep shooting.
The
please."
scene in The Witch that features, I still think, some of the greatest child acting in film, like in a long, long time, where the children are pretending to be possessed or are possessed, depending on your interpretation, and writhing around. That is an amazing collaboration between everyone on set that day, the children themselves and the director. But so I'm not like I'm not trying to shit on some people who were kids in 1979, but I found the acting of the children in this stilted and wooden, and that takes a great director to get a child to not act stilted and wooden.
Yeah, I think that he had his back against the wall for the same reasons that George Romero
Passed. Yeah, it's a made for TV
because
thing.
it's obvious if you know, like, TV movies at this point in the stage in history
Or like you better knock that shit
money.
out fast. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had a crazy schedule. But you had James Marsden. You had like Holly from
James Mason,
Die
yeah.
Hard. Mason, sorry. You had like so many, like, this is actually not a small deal.
No.
There's money behind it. I can see it in the sets.
Yeah.
It's weird that you spent all that time getting the fog right in the sequence that I pointed out earlier, but didn't take the time on the day to like make sure that, or like let's talk about like the main vampire. He is iconic. He looks like, you have not seen this film, most likely, people who are listening, but you've seen this vampire. You know, he's as iconic as Nosferatu in a lot of ways. He's the blue one with the weird front teeth, and you remember him because it's like a cool look.
Mm-hmm.
So they went far, but it's just weird that at random times they didn't go the necessary steps in order to make a movie like not designed poorly, and that's a strange thing to kind of defend as a production.
I'm out of anything to say about this.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. I'm even out of anagrams. That was all the anagrams.
You have all the anagrams.
Molest
I really like.
Sal was the.
I like at the beginning of
Oh,
this
I got
movie.
one more.
All right.
Steam. Lols. See, that one's not good. We're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Steam lols.
Steam lulls. Wait,
What would
are
that
we
movie
doing
be?
this again? Suddenly?
Yeah, what would that movie be? Steam lols.
Steam lulls? Lulls?
LOLs. Steam LOLs.
Steam
Laughing out
lols.
loud at Steam.
This is not a movie. This is a YouTube video for at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Steam plant fails. And mostly it's just people getting burned in the face by
Because they're
steam.
so amazed by steam. Yeah, the concept of pressurized steam.
Like a gasket pops and it like hits them in the face with steam,
and you
they
laugh at it.
and everyone laughs at them.
I see.
They don't understand. It was a simpler
Great.
time back then. Yeah,
Let me see. Is there
yeah, I
anything
mean,
else
if we're doing
interesting?
that, I guess we're done.
Catholic priests. No, look at me, look. Imagery trying to conflate vampires with snakes is cool, but they didn't do anything with it. But I haven't heard that before, comparing a vampire to a cobra. How it like locks eyes with you and it hypnotizes you by swaying. But
There's
it
even
could have
cobra
gone.
imagery
But they
in-
could have gone further with it. Yeah. The town burns down. That's
I
the
thought
end.
it was really funny at the beginning of the movie. Like this is, I think this is on Stephen King.
I got one last thing.
So should I just stop what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's right. It's
Okay.
just a Kingism. Big brother feels guilty for little brother's death. It should have been me.
Oh yes, that's true. That is a thing that he does.
Now what were you going to say?
At least 2 other times.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny at the beginning. Like when you craft a story, it's like, I'm here to investigate a Dracula. I'm Ben Mears, but first I need to lock down some ass. So any good vampire hunter knows that when you're in a new location, you get your ass covered first. Because he immediately is not like, all right, I'm going to go investigate this haunted house or do any of that stuff.
No, he spends a few days striking up a relationship with this woman in town.
After knowing that something's clearly up. Like, it's
And
just,
he says, sometimes he says, I'm after vampires. Sometimes he says, I'm after the house itself. He's not fully clear on his quest.
yeah, that's one thing, is that it seems like it was going that way, where it was like, oh no, he just learned the vampires. But there is 1 or 2 sequences that feel like out of sequence. Because he does that. He talks
Where he
about
goes
the
like,
house.
it's not about the vampires. It's about the whole history of the town.
I
But
think
we don't
that
have
was
time.
him-
It's just vampires.
I think that was the screenwriter trying to navigate, like, he doesn't want to look like a weirdo, and he's not always
Sure.
talking about these vampires.
But you can see how it informs King's later stuff for sure.
Yeah, it's like, well, he just cleared it all up because he's like, well, something King doesn't do that often is have some character know what's going on clearly. And at the same time, a bunch of people don't. And if he does it, like in The Mist, it's for a very short amount of time. And that's something that I think you learn in horror movies, that it seems like a very rich bag of tricks. The idea of like, it's even harder for the person who, like, let's say your protagonist, who knows like, oh, there's like something out in the mist. And I saw it and it had a tentacle or something, and it's a lot more horrifying, and we should like really like focus on it. And all these people like, there's no tentacles in the mist. That game seems like it's probably good to play from a writer's standpoint, because it only ups the conflict in terms of like, now not only does he have to deal with the monsters, but inside he's not believed. But I think King is kind of learning that, like, that kind of conspiracy aspect, it's not that horrifying except for like once. Because if you keep going back to it like several times in this movie, there's multiple people that he has to explain, and Susan has to explain, like, no, they're vampires, man. And most people are like, nah, I don't believe you. And it's like, okay, after the 3rd time of that, you're like, what is the point of the scene anymore? You kind of have to you don't want to really ride that section of your screenplay out for a while, is I think what he's learning in this, or at least the screenplay didn't, do well to avoid that. That's my take.
Budget is a thing.
Budget is
and
thing.
made for TV is a thing, but I'll just point out that 3 years before this, Carrie came out, and Carrie is better significantly. And the very next year was The Shining. Like, imagine watching this on TV at home, and then 1 year later you see The Shining, and you're like, oh, Stephen King is really good. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big difference.
It puts it in perspective for sure. It also shows that, a talented director and screenwriter, worth its weight in gold.
Hey, if anything, it highlights why this is not a book club. Like, why we really, that's the importance of adapting. The adaptation result can vary wildly
Yeah.
Like, I haven't read Salem's Lot, the book. For all I know, it could be Stephen King's finest written book. You would not know that from the way they adapted it. So that's,
I mean, they've tried to make
highlights what we're doing here.
They've made it into a miniseries twice, so there's something in it.
Yeah, and we'll eventually cover the other one, of course,
But it
because we're
seems like
exhaustive.
real basic vampire shit, to be honest.
Let's get the fuck out of here. Fuck this
Let's get the
basic
fuck outta-
vampire shit.
Yeah. That means that we're going to go to our last segment called The Stand.
Time to make your stand.
By me. Oh, stand.
This is kind of just where we talk about where it exists in the King Pantheon.
Mm-hmm.
Baby.
I am a baby. Goo goo. Let's start at the top, shall we? And let's make it quick because I think we know where this is going. I'm just interested in the bottom. Yeah. So number 1, The Shining.
Shining.
Number 2, Dr. Sleep.
Stand By Me.
Number 3, Stand By Me.
Misery.
Number 4, Misery.
Dr. Sleep.
There, that's our unit. That's resolved.
That's our unit.
Number 5, The Mist.
The Mist.
Number 6, Christine.
Number 6, The Running Man.
I really like that one about that evil car. Number 7, Running Man.
The Green Mile.
And that's where we differ wildly. Number 8, Thinner for me.
Christine.
Okay. So this is getting back on track.
Horrible film. Love Carpenter. Probably favorite director of all time.
Number 9, Dead Zone.
Number 9 for me is 1990's It.
That's number 10 for me. So what's your number 10?
My number 10 is The Dead Zone. Yeah, it's pretty shitty.
You really I like Christine more than you. So number 11, Dreamcatcher, which I thought would be at the bottom forever.
Number 11, I'm going with Thinner.
Yeah, that's a shame. Number 12, Green Mile.
Number 12, I'm putting 1979 Salem's Lot.
Okay, so this is episode 14. So Abe put it 2, 3 from the bottom, depending on how you count
the bottom.
it. Yeah.
So we got 2 more.
Number 13 for me, Maximum Overdrive, and for you,
put it at the
Dreamcatcher.
bottom, you dirty dog.
So that means number 14 at the very bottom of the barrel for me, Salem's Lot, because Maximum Overdrive sucked out loud, but it had that cocaine energy. It was a hot mess. Salem's Lot is a tepid, boring 3-hour mess that literally just felt like a chore.
That is so good. That's so good. I love that so much. Maximum Overdrive is so bad because it was irresponsible to make.
So yours is Maximum Overdrive number 14?
Maximum Overdrive is the worst movie, dare I say, of forever.
You mean, objectively, it has worse craftsmanship than Salem's
I don't know
Lot.
if we're ever going to. It's not just craftsmanship. It's like it's a hot mess. Yeah, it's a hot mess, and it had the audacity to even show up in my face. Like that, to me, I take as a bold affront.
Salem's Lot's boring. To me, that's the worst thing you can possibly be.
Yeah, I see that because that's the death of 1,000 cuts, but there's something about just the loud and proud Maximum Overdrive. Just the name makes me...
Like the confidence of it.
Yeah, it's just like, how dare you think that this is normal? You go back to your corner. You go back to wherever you came from. Fuck you, Maximum Overdrive.
Hey, interestingly enough, according to an article from the Hollywood Reporter in 2019, they're working on a new film version of Salem's Lot. New line is,
there's probably something in the book that is like real fresh.
So we might be covering that again soon, in the fullness of time.
Hey.
I would love to cover something that we expect to be good next because I need a palate cleanser. Can we talk about what we might cover next?
Yeah, sure, baby.
I'm looking at the list of all Stephen King adaptations.
Do you want to do an oldie or a newie?
Well, an oldie, I could do Creepshow because I've never seen that, but it's Romero and I expect it to be good because I like all the short stories it's based on. I could do...
We could do something like early days. We could do something like Carrie.
Well, that is real. I mean, Creepshow's early days. It's 82. But I'm still skipping over Shawshank Redemption. It's just not time yet. I could do Dolores
There's so
Claiborne. I
many.
never seen that, and I heard it's actually good.
We could do Apt Pupil.
I've never seen Apt Pupil. It's Bryan Singer, which turns
It
me
is
off.
Bryan
but
Singer. Yeah, that's always rough.
we have to do it eventually.
Yeah, that's true. We could do one of the modern It's.
We could do Hearts in Atlantis, the romance one.
I haven't even seen that actually, so I have no. I don't
Dolan's Cadillac, one I know nothing about.
know.
We could do a mystery one.
We could do Pet Cemetery.
Is that good?
I mean, it's
58% on
New.
Rotten Tomatoes.
it's new. You want something that's also. Are you talking about the? Yeah, the.
There's two
old one.
versions, I know.
There's two versions. They're both kind of fine.
Hey, let's do Apt Pupil. I've never seen it.
You want to see Apt Pupil?
And I bet it's not as boring as Salem's Lot, because I've heard I know some people who even like it a lot. It can't be as bad as Salem's Lot. Do you? Okay.
Yeah. It got
Apt Pupil?
awards. Yeah.
All right.
And it's got Ian McKellen in it. You
Yep.
know?
We'll do the Ian McKellen Gandalf is a Nazi one.
He's a Nazi.
Cool.
Gandalf's a Nazi.
So
All right.
this will be a borderline rapist directing a national treasure, but pretending to be a Nazi. So it's going to be unpleasant, and we'll see you next time on Kings of Kings. Yeah. This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.